right, I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order on AR 2019-378, levying assessments for sewer improvements. Let's start with introductions, starting on this side.
Pete Peterson.
Crystal Kennedy. Suzanne LaFrance.
Felix Rivera.
David Bersinger. Mark Schimsheimer.
All right. So.
Felix,
Sorry.
Chair, I'm on the line as well.
Yep.
This is Austin Quinn Davidson.
And then is Chris on the line too? Okay. Mr. Constant might be joining us as well on the line. So because this item is quasi-judicial, I have to read a little bit. This item, AR 2019-378, a resolution confirming and levying assessments for the sewer special improvements within Levy Upon Connection Roll 2019-S-2, setting date of payment and providing for penalties and interest in the event of delinquency. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility is a quasi-judicial item. The process to review these items is different than the Assembly's legislative role and requires the Assembly to be impartial, refrain from ex parte communications, and make a decision based only on the record before us and testimony in the meeting. If the members had any inadvertent ex parte contacts regarding this matter, they should disclose it on the record. If a member has personal knowledge of the matter or of the property owners contesting inclusion in the assessment roll, it should also be disclosed. At a work session, the Assembly members can ask questions of the staff and parties to the matter to better understand the facts and the process. The property owners objecting do not make a presentation or arguments today. That takes place when this is on the agenda at our January 14th, 2020 Assembly meeting. And the quasi-judicial rules will again apply. I'll turn the presentation over to Abel.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Schimsheimer, Director of Engineering at AWU, and I'd like to make a couple of introductions here. Dave Bersinger, Acting General Manager. Dave. We've got Brian Boss, our Capital Projects Manager, former Planning Manager, is intimately familiar with this kind of a subject. And we've got Karen Bell, our Regulatory Affairs Specialist. Because what we're going to talk today about is drenched in tariff regulatory issues. So, starting in here. Obviously, we're here today as a result of the December 3rd Assembly meeting where a luck roll was on the agenda, there was questions raised, and the luck roll was postponed to January 14th, which is next Tuesday. So we're here today to address all the questions that about 5 or 6 Assembly members asked at that Assembly meeting. So we've gathered those questions, and I put together a presentation which is about 23 slides long. It should take us about 20 minutes to go through, or if we have a conversation in the middle of it, that's fine. It just takes a little bit longer. We gathered your questions, and we attempted to answer them both directly at the end of the presentation and during the course of the presentation. And the way that I'm doing this is that half this presentation is educational in nature. It's not specific to this parcel, because you have to step back and get a bit of education in order to know what's going on. And then there is the issue directly associated with the Hansenly parcel that caused, of course, this whole work session to happen. So we're going to do that. And then hopefully during the course of that, we've answered your questions. And if we haven't, we have direct answers to all the questions. So that's kind of the presentation overview. First half educational about how assessments are created. And stepping back here a little bit, I believe that a significant number of people on this assembly have knowledge of what's going on. Through the last several years, we've been talking about the powder reserve. And I believe you've all sat through presentations on improvement districts. And this presentation is actually, in some respects, no different. We're talking about improvement districts, assessments, and levies. Very similar to powder reserve. Obviously different, but very similar in nature. So a lot of the words, a lot of the concepts flow directly from what you previously heard to this.
Just want to note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Wetzel.
Okay. Everything we do is tariff-based. This is the general disclaimer that we make. Tariff is fundamentally the contract between AWU and its customers. Tariff is RCA and Assembly approved. Tariff changes over time. We change it. We have changes. But it is the contract, and it's the rules that we live by, and we do fairly well living by them. It is a complex document. It's rather large. I believe, Karen, you've got a copy of, is that the...
This is water.
That's just the water tariff, and we've got a similar size binder for sewer, and that's double-sided. So there's quite a bit of a manual that we have to go through. And that's why we have regulatory people. That's why we have attorneys. They help us go through this. And what we're talking about today is, again, dead center tariff. But everything we do is an attempt to be tariff compliant. And at the end of the day, that compliance is subject to audit. So we know if we strayed from tariff or if we misinterpreted tariff, we know eventually because we're caught up in an audit. Talk about special improvement districts real quick. AWU has the capacity via tariff right now to make 4 different special improvement districts. These can be overlapping districts. There's 2 districts for water, 2 districts for sewer. So you've got large and small diameter on each, distribution and collection. Over time, we added under water the transmission main improvement district. That was the latest change to tariff. That didn't exist until about 3 years ago. That was Powder Reserve. That's what allowed them to move forward, or they haven't moved forward, but that's why we had that conversation with them. These other districts are a little bit more historic. We've had trunk improvement districts for quite some time. Now, how you create a district, I don't expect anybody to be able to read this, but you can see that we have a process for creating a district. I referenced that you've all sat through dissertations by others, and myself maybe, on how this flow chart actually goes start to finish. Yes?
Yeah, Ms. Alto.
We can't read the paper version either. Is there like a clear version somewhere?
I will send you a clear
Okay.
version.
It's
My-
not just me, right?
No, it's not just you.
Not yet.
My intent is to show you that there is a flow to what we do. There is a process. It's well defined, and it's not straightforward necessarily. Okay.
Ms. Kennedy? Okay, thank you.
We actually have other information. We'll send you this, and I'll send you other information as well. We have pamphlets and brochures that we hand out to the public that explain the process. And because if you don't know it, you really have to know what's going on there. What a district does, and what an AWU capital project ends up doing, is we end up creating assessments. Assessments are the way that we end up paying for the projects through the district system. And we have the word levy, and the levy is when you take an assessment, you turn it into an invoice or a bill to a property owner. So we levy assessments. Levy is the bill, the assessment's the amount. Special improvement districts will create them, and AWU capital projects will also.
Mr. Constant?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, awesome.
Good morning. We're in 5 minutes into this presentation. We're on slide 6, and we're talking about the creation of levies and assessments from AWU capital projects and improvement districts. I bring this up because, for one thing, we will soon be doing an AWU capital project that we will be taking to the Assembly within the next 3 to 4 months, where we will ask you to do what we call an HB 380 action to allow us to recover the cost of a capital project in an assessment. A distinction between an assessment caused by a district and an assessment caused by AWU is that if you're doing an improvement district, which is a voter-approved, homegrown concept, you're going to pay for it upon completion. You're done with the district, you pay the next day. Now, AWU has a finance plan we put in place via tariff, but you can pay, your bill is due the next day or as soon as it's done. If AWU does a project of which the community didn't vote on, you don't have to pay until you hook up to that project and get benefit from that project. So it's a levy upon connection. So the distinction here is actually goes almost to the heart of what happened on December 3rd, in that if you look at a Hillcrest subdivision, which the Assembly approved a year ago as a special improvement district, their levies are coming due now that the project is done, and they all owe money now. If you look at a Hanson Lake style project, if you hadn't hooked up or used the asset that went by the house or the property, you don't owe until you connect. The distinction is time. You don't have to connect for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. You never need to connect. But the day you do, you cause an action to happen. So the action is floated throughout time, whereas a district is a defined time frame. Completion versus connection. Levied upon completion, the districts, this kind of goes through the process and the fact that the voters, the people inside of a district have to vote at a 51% majority to actually impose this assessment upon themselves. And at the end of that, they're levied upon completion. Just kind of little details into that. And the Assembly is an integral part of that process. You have numerous bites at the apple, so to speak, where these projects are brought before the Assembly, where the contracts to move forward are brought before the Assembly, where the petitions and the ballots are brought before the Assembly, and you have to pass ordinances. You've historically done this frequently. The rate of this has slowed down, so you probably haven't seen it as much in the last 3 to 5 years as maybe 20 years ago. That's a function of the growth of Anchorage. It seems to, we're a little bit more inside the service area. We're more of a mature city, and so our growth has been outside of our service area. AWU capital projects, nothing to do with the voters. It has to do with the fact that these projects are looked at for the benefit of ratepayers in their entirety, not just the people on that street. Powder Reserve was a classic example of this. We were doing a large transmission main through a neighborhood that said, we don't get benefit out of this. We don't want you to impose this on us. We're like, well, this is not about you. This is about the greater good, the greater set of ratepayers. So those are utility-defined projects. We notify, we have notification procedures, we have notification obligations to all parties, and we do that. We do quite a bit of that. And then we're back at the Assembly. Again, you have multiple bites at the apple when it comes to assessments. But at the end of the day, as we put a piece of infrastructure by your parcel, it's a levy upon connection. The point of all this is that we are trying to recover the cost of the project. Now, we don't get 100% recovered. We never have, we never will. But a lot of these projects are have residual benefit, and we get our money back through rate base. You may not pay the upfront capital cost because the time value of money, for one thing, wipes that out. And we don't get 100% hookup. We don't get 100% recovery, and we have this concept of the lower of a luck rate as imposed by the RCA, which is its own animal, and the cost of the project. So some projects come up, 30% short. But we do put them into rate base. And over time, those ratepayers, end up filling the void.
Ms. Allentown?
Thank you. Since these are upon connection, and the price or the levy amount is set at, I guess I need the timing, and then does that levy amount stay static?
Yes, it does. And that's a good
So if the project
observation.
happened this year, let's say, 2020, but then someone didn't connect until 2030, the amount set in 2020 would be the amount due in 2030?
Yes.
Okay.
And go backwards. The amount set in 1970 is still valid. That's why you see a lot of assessments come through the luck rolls, and you're looking at it going like, that's not a whole lot of money. Well, that's what it was in 1970. So the time value of money really accrues to the benefit of parcel owners.
What does LUC stand for? LUC?
Levy upon connection.
Oh, so it's like, okay, I just make sure it wasn't something else.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the educational portion of this. Now we're going to get down to December 3rd. The homeowner that came in represented the Hanson Sand Lake Lot 15 parcel. They were on the luck roll for about $1,200. They were included in that luck roll, and I think that they're going to be unincluded in future luck rolls. So there's the spoiler alert.
Okay.
Why are you on a luck roll? Okay.
Oh, yes, Ms.
Can
Kemp.
you say all that again, please? And, yeah.
Just the last slide or the whole
I totally missed what you were talking. Anyway, yeah.
Where do you want me to go back to?
Start talking about the Hanson Lake or
Okay.
Hanson Sand Lake lot and what you were talking about in terms of what was happening on December the 3rd. Anyway, I missed all of that for whatever reason. That wasn't making sense to me. So.
Okay. So the first half of the presentation was educational because the assembly gets routinely hit with or has to make decisions, and that's kind of where we are. And now you understand the context of which we're going to talk about the second half of this presentation, which is the specifics of this parcel and this parcel owner as they discussed with this assembly on December 3rd. And this is going to go into the questions that the assembly members raised that evening that we didn't really answer that evening, and it triggered us having this work session so that we can address the concerns of the assembly.
Okay, so you weren't talking about anything specific yet. You were just
Not yet.
Okay, sorry, because all of a sudden, I guess you just mentioned several different things, and they were all kind of running together for me. And I thought, okay, wait, I didn't even understand the first one. But anyway, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Please continue. Thank you.
No problem. What causes a parcel to be included on a luck? And we're almost done with this presentation. So what causes a parcel to be included on a luck roll? I mean, you get these luck rolls twice a year, and there's like 5 or 10 or 15 parcels. Well, what's going on here? Well, there is a triggering event that the parcel owners have done that causes them to be included. Okay? And the triggering events are defined in tariff again. So it's not just an arbitrary thing. Examples of triggering event are that somebody gets a connection permit from AWU. So they've decided to connect to the system after all, and it's a levy upon connection. They connect, they're on the line. Platting action, very interesting here. So a year ago we had a business on, I think, 3rd Avenue, and they changed their business, and PM&E said, or building safety, or somebody said, you need more parking. And so they bought the lot next door and said, we got parking now, we got the parking. But in order to make this work, we're going to get rid of the lot line, right? So we have one lot, and we now have a parking lot. So they're happy. The minute they did that, they triggered a platting action, and a platting action comes to AWU, and we looked at it and we said, well, that's interesting, but the parcel that you have purchased never was connected. It's vacant land, it was going to be a parking lot. And it owes, because it is now commingled or combined with an existing parcel, it will owe an assessment. So here's your bill. So a platting action of, let's say, vacating a property line can cause it. Combining lots could have an effect as well.
Ms. Alatel.
Yeah, so this kind of gets to the heart of notice for me. How would the person who bought the other lot know that there was this outstanding potential levy or levy assessment waiting for payment as they start to consider whether or not they want to purchase the property or get rid of that lot line or all those various things?
That's a great question. And when you purchase property, you purchase real estate, you, the purchaser, have an obligation to yourself pretty much to do due diligence. What are the liens associated with the property? What are the debts associated with it?
Where does this lien live in the public record for someone to buy?
It lives at AWU. We have a record of it. And the way that this works is every day, 20 or 30 times a day, title companies, because they're the ones that do the title research on a property, and they're generally working it. Now, here's the thing. If you pay cash, you're at your own mercy. But if you go through a bank, they go to a title company. The title company gives you title insurance. And what the title insurance is about is we've done the diligence that you know that there's no liens, no underground leaking diesel fuel tanks, that there is a whole list of things that they need to figure out. They come to us because they all know, everybody knows that AWU has the potential to put a lien on your property or an assessment or a levy. And so they come to us and we give that information out. We, like I said, give it out probably about 20 to 30 times a day.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. My question is just, so is that something that has to be done through a person in the office, or is there something available online where you can access that information through the website?
We do it through a person in the office.
Okay.
In fact, we actually have we have about 8 people that at any given moment could answer that same question, because we don't have a person sitting around.
Okay.
We have 8 people.
But it's all done manually. We go into our database, and what we do is we vet the information. You really do need the human interface, because you pull that up and then you got to go, okay, let's look at this property, let's think. You could run into this same issue all day long if you're not careful. So we have to go into our databases, pull the information out, verify the information, then we give it out. So when we say what your lien is or what your debt is, it's real. Or at least it's as accurate as we can make it, but it does take a human interface. The complexity of the subject drives you there.
Mr. Constant?
Thank you. So we heard from the petitioner that their title insurance company didn't actually cover the policy. And so can you help me understand why then that would be the case? Because what I understood from that is that this information wasn't reported at the time of their title search.
I understand that, and we're almost done with this presentation. Maybe that'll be answered later, but let me get to it right here and now. I understand that the parcel owners bought this property, and when they bought the property, there was no lien, there was no levy, there was no assessment due at all. It had been previously paid in the 1970s. There was nothing due. There was nothing on the title, there was nothing in the public record. There didn't need to be. A title company would do a research, they could call us, and we would tell them, 0 due. There's nothing due on the property. So it wasn't a failure of anything. The system actually worked just fine. There was nothing due. There is nothing due when you have paid your assessment in full until you get to a triggering event. If you never get to a triggering event, there's nothing due. So there was no debt, there was no levy, there was nothing that anybody missed. It hadn't been created yet.
So to Ms. Dalatel's point, then there is no vehicle for a member of the public to understand that something may in fact occur. So now, the second question on that track, Ms. Martino, was there any action over the course of the last almost 50 years that would or should have been a triggering event for a levy, or has this property literally remained clear of any activity that would do that? Was there an oversight from a previous action?
No. As far as I can tell, when the assessment had been paid in full in the 1970s, since that point in time, this property had not reached any of the levels of a triggering event that would cause any further review.
So when you say the assessment was paid in full in 1970, paid in full by whom?
I don't know whoever owed it and had the legal obligation at the time to pay it vis-a-vis the property.
So then why is there a second assessment?
Let me, Assemblymember Constant, let me finish the next few slides because I'm going to get right to that.
Okay.
And
thank you.
I hope I can make that clear, but we'll pin that question to make sure we answer it.
Want to note for the record that we've been joined by Mr. Presverdia and Mr. Dunbar. Ms. Salatel?
Thank you. Is there a record kept by AWU if an inquiry is done and a search is done by a title company? Do you guys keep a log of all of those?
I believe, yes?
So we have a database called the Assessment Management System, and the Assessment Management System tracks the estimated assessment per parcel. So it tracks the levied assessments, which is recorded against the property, and it tracks the estimated assessment, which the title companies will discover and will find at a property sale. So when Mark was explaining what's discoverable when they buy and sell property, the estimated assessment is what the title company shows. It's just not a levied assessment. So they don't have to resolve it at the property sale, but it is discoverable.
Great, but do you have in that database some way you can make notation when a title company inquires on that parcel? And are you
No.
keeping track of those over time?
We don't keep track of those over time, and it's because of the volume of the questions. We'll get 15 calls a day associated with assessments and estimated assessments, so there's nothing really to track specifically who asked the question and when. We just make the data available.
Okay.
And could you note your name for the record, please?
For the record, my name is Brian Boss. I'm the Capital Program Manager at AWW.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Almost done. We're on. Oh, shoot. Okay. So a little bit of the facts behind this specific lot. This connection was made in the 1970s. The assessment was considered paid in full under the rules of the current tariff. Tariff was changed in 1986. This was a major revision to normalize all the purchased utilities that AWU had made, and also to normalize the combination of the muni with the borough. So there was chaos before this point, and this was an attempt to, stop that. We had to get with one set of tariff for us. This tariff is in effect today. The rules of this tariff, generally speaking, with regards to this issue, are in effect today. Obviously, it gets probably modified every 3 to 5 years. The change that specifically happened here, by the way, that affected this lot, and I'm going to show you graphics of this, was the calculation of assessments. And it went from 150 foot back from the front property line to full lot area. That's where the distinction is. That's where this number thing happened. The parcel owner recently did cause a triggering event by pulling a connection permit with AWU. Tariff says, put a flag there, you've done something, and we need to look at it. However, in the permit, it was specific that this parcel had requested the permit to do a repair to their sewer line. I mean, they had a hole. Fine, they should repair it. It's on property, and we give them a permit to do that, and they do it. It's important to note here that they did nothing to change the use of the parcel. It was their same house, same number of bedrooms, same lot. Nothing happened. Nothing happened to change the use of the parcel. But they did cause a triggering event. And what I'm going to show you here is pre-1986, you would only go 150 feet back in terms of calculation. And if you paid that 150 times your frontage, which, flag lots would have very little frontage and big lots would have, vary for everybody, you were done. Paid in full didn't mean that you paid the entire lot, it just meant that you paid the amount due. Post-1986, you have to pay the whole lot. So if you do a triggering action that changes something, it's like think about rebuilding your house and suddenly you have to upgrade to a new code version. If you do something that requires you to jump into the new tariff says, well, you haven't actually paid the full amount due per the new requirements. You paid the full amount per the old requirements, so you have to be very careful about a triggering event. That's the distinction here. Now, although they went through a triggering event, they didn't go through a change of use. And without a change of use, we don't need to collect more money, because a change of use, as if you had gone from a single bedroom house to a strip mall or something, that would be an incredible change of use. Or if you subdivided, or if you did a number of things, that would materially change the use of the parcel. It would change the impact to the utility. They did nothing to change the use. And so, in review with legal counsel and regulatory, we've decided that this parcel is still considered, for the purposes of what they've done, paid in full. And we don't need to collect any more assessments. So we're proposing, and we're going to get to this, we're going to propose an S version or a new version or whatever the assembly deems fit. And we will be removing this parcel because right now it's paid in full. Now, be forewarned here. This is a 2-acre lot. It's a pretty valuable piece of real estate in this town. I can see a scenario within 5 to 10 to 15 years where the parcel owners, either these parcel owners or future parcel owners, decide to change the use of that lot. And if they do that, they will be under the rules of the post-1986 tariff. And you may see this lot on a luck roll sometime, but not today, because fundamentally, although they did a triggering event, they did not change the use.
Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thanks. In the S version, then maybe somewhere in the language, add a statement to that effect that says future changes of use may be subject to the 1986 tariff.
Okay.
That way, they're made clearly notified when they're communicated to that it's discussed. In the
Right.
process.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go into, so that actually ends the presentation. The next 5 to 10 slides are the summation of all the questions that were asked that evening, and I don't know that we're going to go through every question and get it. But let's see if that triggers a couple of pieces of discussion. So up until this time, you now understand kind of where we're sitting, and you understand what happened to this parcel and where we're heading. We're taking this off the luck roll. The fundamental point here is they are still under the previous version of tariff, paid in full under that version. They pulled a connect permit for a repair that did not change the use, hence there's no amount due. If they do something else, they could cause a triggering event that may put them into the new version of tariff, and then there would be an amount due. That's the conclusion of this whole exercise.
Mr. Constant? Mr. Weddleton?
He's younger and better. Tells it apart easily.
You're smarter.
It surprised me. Maybe I'm jumping way out of order here, but so I moved here in '87. So this '86 stuff was done, where you switched to using the full acreage. But I should remember something in my time here that it was you only went 150 feet in, and it was by frontage and so on. I mean, am I confused? Or is water
can't speak to
different
that.
than sewer?
That was why.
What is your question? I mean,
Well, I thought we were still doing, if someone had asked me, I'd have said, oh, it's not the whole acre, it's just, I didn't remember how many feet, 100,
Right,
150.
Right.
But I remembered frontage made a difference, and then depth, and I had a house off of, in the Sand Lake area that was pie-shaped, and we were right where
Yeah.
Sportsman Point got water, so I looked into what would it cost for me to hook up. And because it was, if it had been this part, it would have been short, but it was a huge amount because we would have had to, I guess it's because we would have had to pay to bring the pipe all the way to the end of
right.
the property. But
Full lot
I
frontage is
just
what you're
remember
up against.
this idea of not using the full lot being dealt with at some time in my involvement. And it's not the case for water or sewer. Since 1986, using full lot.
Okay. Karen, our regulatory affairs specialist, since 1986, or the change in tariff at that point in time, there has the 150 foot is gone as a concept for all districts. As a point of clarification.
My name is Karen, now for the record. I'm the Regulatory Affairs Manager for Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utilities. There are different types of assessments. The assessment in question, when we're talking about Hanson Sand Lake Lot 15, has to do with the trunk assessment. That assessment is for a piece of pipe that doesn't front the property. For that particular assessment, trunk and transmission, there was a 150 feet restriction prior to 1986 that went away. That has not been changed since 1986. Up until about 2017, there was another rule in tariff that said for trunk and transmission assessments, if you had a lot that was 4 acres or greater, there would be a reduction of 25%. In 2017, we removed that from tariff for the same reason. It's not really fair to all of our customers to have a reduction for a large lot. In addition, for assessments associated with distribution and lateral, so these are pipes that actually front the property, there are different options that people vote on in an improvement district for how your assessment could be calculated. For the purpose of one of those calculations, 150 feet back is still used in that calculation. So that may have been what you came across.
Okay, I feel better. Now you remember Brian probably gave his presentation. So it's good. I feel better. It wasn't just me.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving into questions. A lot of your questions, somebody member Zalatel, were related to notification. I saw that as a theme throughout the assembly questions. Is, hey, how is anybody supposed to know this? Did you tell anybody this? Did you tell them if they don't like it, what they can do? What is their recourse? We've examined that. At the last slide here, I have some lessons learned, and we're going to talk about where I'd like to take the utility with regards to this, because our communication was inadequate. I mean, obviously, having a parcel owner sit in front of the assembly to adjudicate this issue at an assembly meeting is the wrong time and place to do this. We should have been more proactive. We should have been. It was a weakness that's come to light, and we're going to do something about it. So we're going to up. We did our legal notifications. That doesn't. And if you read them, it's pretty horrific. It doesn't really get the information across that you need in order to be a property owner to make any intelligent decision. If something is being disputed, there are mechanisms that the homeowners have to dispute this prior to going to the assembly, and obviously we're going to see what we can do to make sure that people understand that better. If the appeals process, you'd learn from us, or you could learn online from the RCA or via our tariff. But if you've ever tried that process, good luck. That's not going to work. It has to come from us. And we do this in other correspondence where we talk about if you do not like what you're hearing from us, you have remedies, right? You have recourse you can talk to. And we have, in tariff, gives an entire list of recourse. You can go to the RCA. You can go, and then, if you can't go to the RCA, you can go to the ombudsman. You can do a variety of things. But to just say you have no recourse, or your recourse is to stand in front of the assembly on a Tuesday night, that's not quite right. Mr. Weddleton asked some questions about Exhibit A. I think that was the number of years it could be financed. I don't remember that question. The triggering events are what causes an assessment to be turned into a levy. And this goes into, Mr. Constant, you had quite a few questions about the timing. Like, how can something from the 1970s be considered unpaid? It has to do with the concept of a triggering event.
I heard that in advance. I just thought that this house was already on the sewer water system, and so it was hard to understand how they were initially levying after all this time. I get it.
Okay. Did we have a concern with postponing? No. In fact, I'm not sure that we're even going to be getting to this on Tuesday night. That'll be at the will of the assembly, but it could be another 2 weeks, doesn't bother us. We have an obligation to do this twice a year.
Have you been in touch with the homeowner during this time? Like, do they know that there's an S version and that they're not going to have to?
No,
Probably not going to.
actually, no, we have not. And the reason being, well, come up with all kinds of excuses here. I was on vacation for 3 weeks. Other people were on vacation. At the end of the day, one thing I'm trying to point out here is the answer to this question, I boiled down to being very simple. To get to this point was a complex, long, arduous, legally involved process that you don't want to know about. So as of 5:30 last night was the last legal opinion that we had on this presentation. So I'm telling you today, it's news. It will be news to them, and we will get to them quickly, because obviously we need to do that. But it's not like I've been holding on to this information for 2 weeks. No, I've been holding on since 5:30 last night.
Ms. Zolotow.
Thank you. Did you say we do this twice a year?
Yes.
Where we go through this?
It's our intent, yes.
That's the intent, okay. Well, all right. And all of them citywide or muni-wide then? So anything that's out there that could potentially be new assessments, twice a year, that's it?
We try to do a luck roll twice a year on issues like this. Now, you will see periodically improvement districts have their own, and that's not part of this. But yeah, you'll see 2 sewer and water luck rolls coming to the assembly a year.
Okay, because what I'm thinking about is I'm just thinking about how we can assist in consumer education and some things like that. So that way, we kind of have the heads up, kind of like this property tax assessment, green cards come out, and it's like great to have the heads up that's coming out, so that way as we start to interact with the public on these issues, we can just be prepared and ready to go. So
Okay.
that's why I was wondering.
It really goes to communication with the public that is being affected here.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that, but that message, we got. Member Constant we lumped these together. I think we've addressed that, the timing issue. I think we're also going to see quite a few more of these pop up over the next couple of years, because if you connected in the 70s, you're going to be pulling a repair permit right around now. And so, you didn't have to do that in the 80s, but you probably have to do it now. And so we're going to see more of these pop up. You won't see them because we're not taking this to you because there's nothing due. But we didn't have a lot of these. I mean, this was a very, very, very rare case. But I can see going forward, it's going to happen more often. Now, as rare as a case this is, there was one more on this roll.
Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you. So I was going to ask about that, about the rough number of properties that are in this situation. I understand that you don't have a great sense of that, but what effect, if any, is this going to have on AWU's bottom line or on sort of your financial projections? Were you counting on this revenue in any way?
Okay, so there are about 10,000 properties that are levied and paid in full under the pre-1986 tariff that if they cause a triggering event could possibly end up on a luck roll. There's 10,000 properties like this, more or less. We brought to you luck rolls for years, and we went backwards to find out how many properties pre-1986 paid in full, pulled a connect permit for repair only without a change in use. There's been 5. And we will be going backwards and figuring out how to compensate potentially these 5 parcels. Now realize that the amount of those assessments is in the $100 range.
Right. Okay.
So financially, does it impact the utility? Not in the slightest. It's more of a function of if we collected money that wasn't due to us, we're going to return it. It's going to cost us more to return the money than it's the money itself, but that's what we do. So financial impact, no. Somebody remember, France had these similar, exactly that, how many are really involved here. I think we've answered that. And somebody remember Dunbar. There was no change to the luck process for water in 1986. So this issue does not exist for this issue. It would exist for trunk, which is sewer. Okay, brings us to the options on the table. We have made revisions, but not with Mr. Constant's recent request. But we can do that pretty quickly. We can give you a S version for a late on the table for Tuesday night, or at your convenience, we could put it off by 2 weeks for all.
I'll be happy to sponsor that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll give you an S version in advance with these memos and so on and so forth. But it's too late to go through formal channels.
Because I imagine they'll be back.
Well, we'll be talking to them today and Monday. So moving forward, this was a good opportunity for us to, refine our understanding of tariff and learn some things and change our procedures. I mean, no doubt that's what this was. So the first thing we did is we were examining luck rolls for any similar occurrences, and like I said, we found I think 5, which we don't even have a mechanism right now to figure out what to do with that, but we're going to figure this one out. It really is important for our staff to understand the distinction between, a triggering event and use. We never really thought about that, quite frankly, because until you hit one of these, why are you thinking about that? You're reading tariff and it tells you a connect permit is this. But obviously it takes a little bit more thought, so we need to kind of educate our staff that this is something that you're going to see. We need to communicate to parcel owners the appeal process better. I broadened that. I've read the letter that we send out to the parcel owners, and it's been cobbled together for the last 25 years, and everybody added a sentence, and at the end of it, it's not really legible. So we'll be working on a revision to the notification letter that makes it very clear to people what's going on and what their recourse is if they have any issues. Then we also have an internal audit that we do. We actually had this program audited 5 years ago. One of the outcomes of that audit was that we produced the twice a year roll. They said you should be doing this twice a year, because I think we were doing it less than twice a year.
It was random. Some years we did more, some years we did
Right.
less. It just wasn't consistent.
It wasn't a structured approach, so they said make a structured approach. I'd still like to do an internal audit in the next round, and I think we just closed the 2020 round for audits. But this is something I'd like to see, because we want to make sure that we have a clean bill of health at the end of this. And with that, 50 minutes in. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I have one from Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 things. One, I think 2020 audit, Mr. Chair, or the chair and I are both on that committee, and we can bring that up to add it to the list.
Okay, thank you.
This was a really great presentation. Thank you for it. I'm really happy about the outcome too. Would you mind going back to the triggering events? I understand, like with the platting action, why combining the property would cause the levy to be triggered, but why vacating or vacating the property line? Or can you think of an example?
Okay, so now I'm going to have to call Lifeline here. So we take a property, we split it in half. It does create a triggering event. It does come to AWU for review. Why would it cause an assessment to happen?
Yeah, can you go back to your slide on the 150 back?
This?
So yeah, the arrow up so you get rid of this line. So as you can see right now, this is a flag lot. The flag lot itself is connected. Say there's a house here, and they're operating just fine. They have their house on their flag lot. They've connected to the water main or the sewer main, and they have their assessment. Say they want to change the use and they want to do a replat, and they want to include this parcel as part of the flag lot. When they do their platting action, they're essentially creating a new lot. That new lot now is connected to the infrastructure. Because it's connected to the infrastructure, the plat itself created a connection for that portion of new area that wasn't previously assessed. And so we would assess it and levy it as part of the platting action. So arrow down now. So we would be capturing this as part of the new lot because it is now connected, whereas it wasn't before.
That's vacating a property line.
Yeah.
Her question is, if you take that lot on the right-hand side and you decide to divide it in half,
Yeah.
what
You
what
wouldn't,
happens?
you only, on a plat, you only levy the assessment for the portion of the platted parcel or newly platted lot that is connected. So a plat itself might not trigger the assessment if that platted parcel isn't connected.
But the intent of, let's say somebody has a 2-acre lot and we're going to divide it in half. It's only got one connection to the 2-acre lot. If you divide it in half, you have a second connection. If you get a connection, you get the connect permit, you get a change in use, and we collect on that lot. But it would take more than just, it would be more than just a division.
Yeah.
There'd have to be the change in use.
Part of what the planning department does in the assessment section in the planning department is they review plats. So when new parcels are created through plats, they assess appropriately, but it is based on the new lot having a connection. If it's replatted and it's not connected, then we do not levy that area that is benefited. We would let that go until they did another triggering event like a connection or something to that effect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thanks. I have now 2 questions. That raises another question. Assume this is the current and prevailing condition where you have 4 lots that are all already connected, but none of them are connected in the 1986 post paradigm. If they eliminate this, make this one lot, they would actually be disconnecting one connection functionally. So would they still be forced to pay an additional levy?
Well, my answer is yes, actually, because it has to do with you've changed the use. But let's see, it's a great question, Brian.
When I was walking back, I lost track of the conversation. So if we're talking trunk assessment and you changed this lot by plat and it had an estimated assessment for that additional area, if that portion, okay,
So
sorry.
just assume this is the current condition, that everybody is levied to the pre-1986, all 4 lots. But you decided as an owner you wanted to eliminate this line and make this all one big lot. Now, you've already paid for 2 connections. Are you going to have to pay for an additional post-1986 connection, even though both lots are already
On a platting action,
not on planning action, on planning and then actual development? Assume that they are connected.
yes, you would. And the reason you would is because you're changing the development of the lot. When you change the development of the lot, you have to bring it up to current tariff standards.
So this then raises the next question that I was going to ask previously, and that is, can you provide for us kind of a list of triggering events and then events that might otherwise not trigger? Because just a repair is one. I can't imagine what in all the universe of all possible things that might happen would be other non-triggering events, but maybe we should think through that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
There might be a rational line for us to contemplate that is a valid conversation. I don't want to have it contemporaneously right here.
Mark, it is actually defined in tariff what a triggering event is.
I know, that's why I say right up here, it's defined in tariff and there's examples of the use of triggering events. But I see where Assemblymember Constant is coming from. Connect permit is a triggering event, and yet we aren't going to collect.
Or you are inadvertently because just the system is rolling forward, and so this is a very interesting conversation to me where we can make some very good, not compliance, but fidelity improvements to our system, and so this is great.
Well, this is an opportunity for lesson learned and for doing improvements, obviously. So I understand what, and this has actually kind of bugged me, quite frankly. But
it's in real estate, oftentimes you contemplate fairness of what is the reasonable line between the parties, right? And so if we're in that area that's a little gray, and I like it. It's very interesting. should have this conversation offline.
We should, and we should have it with our regulatory folks, because they might make it actually more clear to us, and we might not like the answer.
Yeah, then maybe learn something outside of our jurisdiction.
Thank you. Ms. Alatel?
Thanks. I want to go back to the parking lot example. So you have your lot, you buy a lot next door, you're going to use it as a parking lot. You replat it so it's all one lot, but you're not actually, I mean, if you hadn't replatted it, you could have used it either way for a parking lot, so
Yeah.
it's vacant with parking. The use of the parking lot itself isn't something that would trigger a connection, it's the platting action.
Right.
It doesn't seem to follow then to me that you have to suddenly pay a connection there other than what you could subsequently develop it. I mean, if there was a change of use to that later, I guess, I don't know. It seems like we're just because we're getting rid of a property line, we're now forcing the levy on connection, but we may not be connecting.
The levy is not to pay for the connection. The levy is to pay for infrastructure that you are benefited from.
Where's the benefit? That's what I'm getting
The benefit is that 2 miles away from your property, there's a very large sewer line that drains the sewage from your property in a trunk, and you have the benefit of that trunk, and you are part of the district.
But that would have existed regardless, if you've gotten rid of the line or not. So if you hadn't gotten rid of the line, you wouldn't have paid.
I think the intent is when you replat, you change the potential of how you can develop your lot. If you have the flag lot we said before that was residential and you all of a sudden make that bigger, you've changed your development potential. You now can do a fourplex or something like that where you couldn't before. That's why you review it upon plat. It's because you're modifying that development potential.
Interesting. Let me think on that some more. I'll probably have some later.
It's a real case.
File up
It's a
questions.
real case scenario.
Yeah.
I brought up. I have we went through that extensively with a parcel owner.
Because there could be zoning restrictions and other things that really wouldn't give you that benefit. So, okay, I just wanted to think
Right,
about
and now you're starting to overlap things like Title 21, zoning, platting, building safety, and AWU. And as you do that, you realize why it's just not easy to develop anything.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Sounds like we will have an S version before us on the 14th. I look forward to that deliberation.